The fantasy news must flow. Welcome everybody to another episode of I almost just said another episode of Daniel Green. Welcome everybody to another episode of Fantasy News. I am your disheveled goblin host Daniel Green, and today we have some exciting special announcement news for future releases from myself and some great Cosmere news. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the Cosmere New Who's. Didn't quite rhyme, but I tried to make it work. And a very fun channel to follow, Cosmere Junkie, already put together a little compilation of what exactly this news is, so I'm gonna shout them out and play it now. Follow smaller creators.
The whole Brandon Sanderson thing has gotten kind of big. I need another brain. And Dan is changing jobs on Monday.
Guess who I am gonna be working for? Brandon!
I need help with the narrative side of this. I need another brain. But the goal will eventually be to have Dan just kind of help me work on the Cosmere and things like this. And I need somebody who can write stories that I can't. And I've been thinking for a while, I'm like, I need another me.
Can you imagine, by the way, someone who writes 4 secret novels and is like, this is not enough? Absolutely.
Like, I need help to manage the whole thing. Not just the books, but, you know, the entire series.
So that is going to entail writing a bunch of books. There'll be a bunch of co-written Dan and Brandon Cosmere books.
This is what we're doing. This is the new thing.
Yes, we officially, as Cosmere fans, as it has been hinted at for quite some time, or directly stated by Sanderson in live streams, are finally getting another mind officially entering the Cosmere space to help author books. What does that mean for fans? Well, specifically, Brandon Sanderson realized some people could theoretically read as fast as he could write, so he's decided to bring in another writer just to give it that little extra nudge. Not really, but with Sanderson getting more and more put on his plate, with the future of the Cosmere looking bigger and bigger, absolutely makes sense that he wants to shore up the amount of writing and quality of writing that'll be done by bringing an incredibly respected second mind in to help keep projects coming down the pipeline. It just makes complete sense, and Dan Wells is an incredible grab. I am saying that with a bit of fonitude because I personally have not read his books, but I looked into reviews for the ones that are out there, and my lord, Dan Wells is quite celebrated and interesting, has a thorough background in horror. Whether or not that will affect the tone of the Cosmere moving forward, I'm not sure, but we'll love to see. As a horror fan, please? Not that the Cosmere hasn't been horrific before, it certainly has. But this brought one question to the forefront of my mind, and that is, has the Cosmere gotten bigger than Sanderson himself? And I don't mean that in any kind of disrespectful way. It is 1000% the brainchild of Sanderson, but like other grand fantastical universes before it, could the Cosmere be something that lives beyond Sanderson's own retirement? New authors, new people, keeping it going for generations to come. Another Star Wars, Marvel, DC, the Cosmere. It sounds insane to say, but look how big the Cosmere has gotten with just Sanderson. Now we're officially getting more people involved. How much bigger could it get? So I actually did reach out to Sanderson's team for some form of answer. I was told to hold on for possibly a comment beyond no comment, and if I got one, I'll put it in now. Did I get one? I genuinely don't know what the
So, this is a good question. Very interesting question. Will the Cosmere persist after I retire? By the way, thanks for phrasing it that way, Daniel. It's maybe not what people are thinking, but it is a much less morbid way of phrasing it. So after I retire, will the Cosmere continue? So I like to be deliberate about my career, and I have noticed something. Authors who hit a certain success level, once they retire, books continue coming out from them for many years. This seems an inevitable part of the way that media works today. This makes some authors uncomfortable. Robert Jordan, for instance, said, Harriet, he did not want to become what he called a legacy series. This is something like Conan the Barbarian, where not just years after the author's retirement, but decades and even potentially centuries, you see more things coming out. This is part of what influenced me in saying, I want to only do the 3 Wheel of Time books that I signed up to do. In fact, Harriet and I had a meeting very early in the process, somewhere in 2008, where she said, "What do you think?" Granted, this wasn't my decision, this is her decision, but she wanted to know what I thought. And what I said is, I think we should finish his series and be done. Because I knew how uncomfortable he was. I am less uncomfortable, but at the same time, I don't know that I like the idea of a giant legacy series. I think it is good that these things have a shelf life because it opens up opportunities for new authors and new concepts and new stories to happen. And so what I'm doing is I'm very deliberately building my company in a way that if I were to, let's get morbid, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I want to have the people in place to finish the stories for you all so that you have endings. This is something that it was a great honor for me to do for Robert Jordan, and I stand by that being something that should have been done. I do know there are some people who disagree with that, and I respect their choices, but Robert Jordan wanted it finished, Harriet wanted it finished, and the fans wanted it finished. I want to be in the same position. I also want to have a position where we're doing this deliberately and having control over it. Some of you know I have hired Dan Wells as VP of Narrative, my long-term friend and collaborator, Dan Wells. This is so that I can have another brain in the Cosmere, so to speak. My goal is to create something that a lot of people love for a long, long time. But at the same time, I'm not trying to create something that continues forever, if that makes sense. Hopefully the books will. Hopefully the books that I've written will be read forever. But does that make sense? So it's kind of a wiggly, wishy-washy answer. I think it's inevitable at this point that my books would continue past my retirement. I want to be deliberate about it and have an endpoint to them scheduled, and maybe we'll hit that before I retire, in which case none would need to be released. But maybe we won't. And who knows what the future will tell and how I'll be feeling about this in 20 years. So I think it is likely the Cosmere will continue, but hopefully we do it in a deliberate way and in a way that is creating very high quality stories and it is finishing up things so that there is an actual ending. So there you go.
Moment of recording, I had to get going, but no rush on their team. Love you guys. Thank you for even responding. Oh, and a special side note, Dan Wells and Sanderson are already also working on a novel together that has been described as like Narnia, but evil. That is not Cosmere related, but will bring us the first taste of what these authors can bring to the table together. Now, I ran wild with the speculation there. All we know is for sure is Dan Wells is coming into co-author books. We don't know what exactly is going to be happening with the Cosmere, but this implication does hint at some doors possibly being open in the future, and I find that fascinating. We have cover reveal news, because if you missed it yesterday or 2 days ago here on the channel, I interviewed Brent Weeks about a new run of covers for the Night Angel series, as well as the cover reveal for Night Angel Nemesis. Go ahead and check out that interview. Brent Weeks is always so much fun to talk to. We had a lot of laughs, or just appreciate the covers here. I think they're quite nice. And in a super premium reveal of covers, Folio Society is continuing its knocking out of the park with their A Song of Ice and Fire run, with the reveal of their Dance with Dragons, coming in at $260 for the Americans here. Ouchie! I do feel the need to say, Folio, yes, from the looks of it, knocked it out of the park. I love my one Folio A Song of Ice and Fire set for actually the book A Game of Thrones. That being said though, for those who can't, ball out and spend this much money on a book, you're not missing anything beyond fancy presentation. I always feel the need to say that because I know there's so many people who want these, but all you're really getting is a nice piece of art to put on a shelf. If you have a basic paperback and love that basic paperback, you are just as big a fan as someone who has the super fancy editions. Just want to say that because I love y'all. And then one last cover reveal before we get into one that's a little bit special for me because it's mine. The High Republic is continuing its launch with the latest cover of Path of Vengeance. Now, I read one of these High Republic books ages ago. It's pretty much entirely left my mind, but I do want to ask the hardcore Star Wars fans out there, are you liking the way these books are going? Have you enjoyed the expanded literature side of the Disney Star Wars universe that they're trying to rebuild up after decanonizing so much? Or is this kind of falling into more of a mixed bag for you? It has been nice to see some of the rhetoric around Star Wars return to positive things, like with the Obi-Wan show not being hated and some of the Mandalorian stuff still being liked, I do think there is, if they take it in the right direction, a lot of life left in Star Wars. It's just exciting in some ways to see Disney is putting a bit of resources into bringing this version of the Star Wars universe to life, because I think a lot of us would like to see big time jumps forward and back for new life on the live action big screen for Star Wars, and I think these are the seedlings for this possibility in the future. But finally, I am very, very excited to officially announce what I have been working on behind the scenes here on the channel. I will be having 2 releases brought to you by Wraithmarked Creative in 2023. One is an all-new series from me that is a science fiction endeavor, and the cover looks like this, but a lot less blurry. I haven't been given permission to show you the full cover yet, just a blurred version. If you can unblur this, good on you. Prove it to me. Show me. And maybe it'll help you to know there's a bit of this being shown unblurred on Wraithmark's official Twitter account. You can go check it out to see what one of the signs in the background is saying. And a hand, I believe. Now, obviously, anytime I mention Wraithmarked Creative in the future, please keep in mind that I am working with them. I am not someone who is impartial, but there is also a very good reason I have chosen them to move forward. I've worked with a lot of people in the publishing space, new and old, and Wraithmarked Creative, in my opinion, is really trying to embrace what publishing is going to look like in the future more than anyone else. Combine that with really high quality editions, a form of hybrid publishing that I think really benefits both me and them, as well as a ton of resources to help with editing the text, layout. I'm just really excited to see what we can do together. And its title will be I don't know if I can say the title. One second. I don't know if I
Hey, sweet cheeks, what's up?
Hey, so we're doing the blurred cover reveal. Can I say the name of the book?
This is the kind of thing that might be better to announce once we have the typography for it, so that you can throw the typography up, which is a really cool thing.
Okay, that makes good sense. You're being recorded right now. I hope that's okay.
Go yourself.
All right, I'll talk to you soon, but I'm recording right now, so I gotta get back to it.
Later, bye.
And for the aforementioned second project of 2023, let's just say it's related to a series that many of my fans are already familiar with. My only one and other one. You put those two things together, I don't know. Lawful times. I can't get into too many specifics on what exactly that book is going to be, but I am happy and proud to say we are going to be taking 100% of the profits from my second release next year and donating them to charity. Things like this, I feel like I can make a bigger difference, a more positive, if instead of just pocketing cash, I give back. And so Wraithmarked has agreed that 100% of profits on my and their end going straight to a good cause, the Trevor Project. Thank you everyone who has waited pretty much all of 2022 for new word on books I'm releasing, and I am so pumped to get them out. I just have to deal with the fact that because I'm not self-publishing anymore, I cannot work on my own timeline. That is 100,000% the most painful part. But that's actually a good thing. Stepping back into like the difference between self-publishing and what's happening now, I'm being forced to take more time, more thorough edits, and advice from people who aren't afraid to tell me no.
Go yourself.
That's basically why I've embraced Wraithmark. You can't tell from the banter I had with Bryce, he's someone who's willing to kind of call me on my shit. And so I'm hoping to have a higher quality output exponentially so. I'm very proud of my last books, but I know I can do so much better. And that's what I can't say title of is going to be. Okay, but moving on from there, we have some quickie news back to back. First up is that we will be getting Dune 2 from Denis Villeneuve 2 weeks earlier than we initially thought. It is now going to be released on the weekend that Blade from Marvel was going to be on, November 3rd of 2023. John Carpenter made waves in an interview when he said the only video game he would consider adapting would be Dead Space, and I'm covering this for 2 reasons. One, to let you know, while this is a fun thing for him to be saying again in an interview, the most important part of that is again. It's something he said before, and whereas a lot of times in Hollywood when you see someone like John Carpenter say this, it might mean like secretly behind closed doors, there's already some things in the works. I read the actual interview and this more did just kind of feel like an offhanded comment where he's like, oh, I like that game, I would adapt it. I love John Carpenter. Fun fact, I didn't like Dead Space that much. I played it for a couple hours on stream and found it very mid. I'll check out Dead Space 2. A lot of people told me that aged better. But we're going to move on from the kind of fun time news to one fairly heavy topic that's just really important and I'd like to raise awareness on. It's a heavier story though, so that's not your cup of tea. I understand if you want to bounce, But well over 1,000 authors have come together to sign a letter in defense of libraries and librarians. This includes heavy-hitting names like Neil Gaiman, Mercedes Lecky, Naomi Klein, Chuck Wendig, and so many more. And I'm just going to let the letter speak for itself. Libraries are a fundamental collective good. We, the undersigned authors, are disheartened by the recent attacks against libraries being made in our name by trade associations such as the Association of American Publishers and the Publishers Association, undermining traditional rights of libraries to own and preserve books, intimidating libraries with lawsuits, and smearing librarians. We urge all who are engaged in the work of getting books into hands of readers to act in the interests of all authors, including the long marginalized, mid-list, and emerging authors whom librarians have championed for decades. We write to ask that all publishers, distributors, and trade associations 1. Enshrine the rights of libraries to permanently own and preserve books, and to purchase these permanent copies on reasonable terms, regardless of format. Many libraries would prefer to own and preserve digital editions, as they have always done with print books, but these days publishers rarely offer them the option. Instead, when libraries have access to ebooks at all, the prices libraries pay to rent ebooks are often likened to extortion. Digital editions are more affordable to purchase and often more accessible, but libraries are already relying on emergency funds and may only be able to license a small selection of mainstream works in the future. In turn, readers will have fewer opportunities to discover the more diverse potential bestsellers of tomorrow. It is past time to determine a path forward that is fair to both libraries and authors, including a perpetual model for digital ownership based on the cost to maintain a print edition. 2. End lawsuits aimed at intimidating libraries and diminishing their role in society. The interests of libraries are the interests of the public and of any author concerned with equity and longevity for themselves and their fellow writers. We are all on the same side. Yet a unanimously passed Maryland state law ensuring libraries pay reasonable fees for digital editions died after the AAP sued, and after a previous suit failed, several publishers are currently suing the Internet Archive Library in an attempt to prohibit all libraries from lending out scanned copies of books they own. While undermining libraries may financially benefit the wealthiest and most privileged authors and corporations, in the short term, this behavior is utterly opposed to the interests of authors as a whole. 3. End smear campaigns against librarians. Recent comments likening library advocates to mouthpieces for big tech are as tasteless as they are inaccurate. Also concerning are the awards recently given to legislators who have advocated in favor of the dangerous surveillance of library patrons and of the laws that criminalize librarians. As a last bastion of truth, privacy, and access to diverse voices, libraries' digital operations grow ever more essential to our society, and their work should be celebrated, not censured. We fear a future where libraries are reduced to a sort of Netflix or Spotify for books, from which publishers demand exorbitant licensing fees in perpetuity, while unaccountable vendors force the spread of disinformation and hate for profit. Publishers must balance profits for the most prominent authors and shareholders with the rights of the public to free, unsurveilled access to knowledge and information, as well as the rights of emerging authors to be collected, preserved, and discovered. Sincerely, the undersigned. Now, within this letter, there are plenty of citations for examples of what they are talking about, but here's really what I want to say. This might be something that you kind of think is a flash in the pan, it's something that's an ongoing issue that needs to be solved, but what you must remember is that among society, even still to this day, for many people, millions of people, libraries are the one place where they can have true unfettered access to information. And the fact that many libraries are publicly funded means that the private sector has an incentive sometimes to undermine and undercut them. An attack on libraries for any reason is an attack on all of us, and the most vulnerable of us more so than most. Fightforthefuture.org and these authors have signed their name to a very good cause. I have added my name to this list. If you're an author, I encourage you to do so as well. And if you're not, I encourage you to share and at authors you like and respect to bring this to their attention. Thank you for sticking around for this kind of heavier topic at the end. If you'd like to check out any of my already out books, they're linked in the description down below. I show them at the end of a lot of videos, and I also have merchandise if you'd like to just wear a cover or a design that represents the channel here. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.